Hello, everyone, and welcome to Grip Lock, Foundation Disc Golf's weekly podcast. I'm Hunter, joined as always by Trevor, and we've got one heck of a show. There was a lot that happened between the last episode and this episode. But first off, we're going to start it off with something that's kind of disc golf related, in the fact that one of them plays disc golf. The other actually, I think, plays disc golf some too.
Maybe.
We can
draw that conclusion.
We can draw that conclusion. But the Jake Paul versus Ben Askren fight is official.
Sure.
So really quick, before we get into any of the actual disc golf stuff, who's winning it? Who's taking it down?
This is really tough. I shouldn't be, but it is, because even though Ben Askren is obviously has a really good MMA career, he's not a good striker. He wrestles, and Jake Paul has been training as a boxer for years now. He's not just some push. He's not a pushover.
Yeah.
I'll say this for one thing: Ben Askren is not going to get knocked out. He has a chin on him. Yes, he got knocked out by a flying knee. That would have knocked out anybody. But I've seen him take enough shots where he's not getting knocked out by Jake Paul. But I'll say if he trains seriously from now till the fight, he'll win. If he doesn't really take it seriously, he will lose. He will lose.
So you're saying, who are you saying?
I'm going to take Askren just because that's the guy I'm going to root for.
That's the most sit on a fence answer I've heard.
I know how to sit on a fence.
You put the post in your mouth.
Yeah. I want to root for Ben Askren, so therefore I'm going to choose him because that's who I'm going to pick.
I'm going Jake Paul.
It's not a bad pick.
Mainly for a few different reasons. One, I don't know anything about boxing or MMA. Two, I do agree with you that Ben Askren isn't going to get knocked out because he's probably taking a lot harder punches.
Yeah, with not boxing gloves.
But I think I do know enough about Ben Askren to know that he's a wrestler and know that, I just think MMA and UFC, it's just like when Conor McGregor tried fighting Floyd Mayweather. Obviously, it's nowhere near that scale, but it's the same idea of it's a different sport.
Okay,
boxing and MMA.
Also important, Conor McGregor is one of the most prolific and accurate strikers in UFC. He's not a wrestler, so him going to boxing.
I'm just saying it's a different sport.
Yeah, I'm saying he didn't look like an idiot stepping in a boxing ring. On the complete opposite other end of the spectrum is Askren, who does not strike, but has had his entire career because he was an Olympic class wrestler.
Yeah, it's a great move for Jake Paul because...
Great move for both of them because they're going to make a ton of
Well,
money.
yeah, Ben Askren's going to make a ton of money, but as far as Jake Paul goes, it's it allows him to fight a real fighter so that people can stop.
People are already we wanted you to fight a boxer, not a
I'm
wrestler.
just saying it's that next step. Because no one was respecting him for knocking out Nate Robinson. Because it's Nate Robinson. I couldn't knock the guy out. He would have beat me to snot. Beat the snot out of me. But I'm just saying. Regardless, I'm going Jake Paul.
All right.
Anyways, that has nothing to do with any of the podcast. And much, much larger disc golf news. I've always wanted to do that. It feels so official. We have James Conrad making it official.
MVP.
Going to MVP on a 2-year deal. That includes his own line of discs. We don't know exactly the details of that, but in an interview he said it looked like it was going to be multiple over the next few years. And then I want to read you a few things that he has talked about, and then we'll kind of get our opinions on this. Mm-hmm. So when asked about the reasoning for the switch, he listed a few things. On Ultiworld, he's quoted as saying, "I felt like the relationship with Innova didn't evolve quite as quickly as my performance in the sport evolved." In an interview he did with Johnny Disc Golf, he mentioned a few different pain points that I thought were interesting. One, he said he felt like he wasn't a main focus on the Innova team. He received offers when he was planning on leaving. He received offers from several other places, but felt that many of them would have had the same middle of the road focus. There was already a face of the brand, like Discraft, Prodigy, places like that, where he's not going to overshadow a Paul or a Chris Dickerson or something like that. He felt like MVP offered him the most currently that he was looking for, and they also offered him some stuff long term past his playing days that he felt more secure with. And the big point he mentioned was how he felt more valued at MVP. He mentioned several different things about the way MVP treated him when he showed up, and also said that he spoke to the owners a lot more at MVP in his short time that he was there than he ever did at Innova in his years and years playing with Innova. So when you're looking at this deal and you're hearing some of the reasoning behind it, what is the biggest takeaway for you from this thing?
My biggest takeaway, other than the fact this is a huge win for James and MVP, is that bad look for Innova.
Yeah.
That's my biggest takeaway. As far as actual monetary value, is James Conrad your big ticket player? He's a solid touring pro. Going to be around for a while still, but He's not going to win a ton of events on tour. He's not going to move a ton of plastic, although he is likable. So maybe if there was more effort, he would move more plastic. I'd like his whole like signature thing with his hair. Like I'd like to think that if that was done right, that could move a lot of discs. But regardless, as a company, like to have a player who just like feels like he was kind of left by the wayside and not treated well, who is like been a pretty big part of your company, especially now when your roster has thinned out quite a bit. And maybe that's a reason why it's thinning out. Like it's not a good look for Innova. Like you gotta pay attention to your players, and like, even if you can't afford to give them a ton of money, if you show effort towards like taking care of them, that goes a whole long way. Like that, that's by far my biggest takeaway. I'm very happy for James. I think James is a solid player, very well liked, but I don't think he's amazing. I don't think he's getting the kind of deal that he got at MVP anywhere else. I think the reason he got it is because MVP, they're kind of building an audience right now. So he is like the kind of pro where they could make him the face of their company, but he's actually affordable. But with that being said, like it's on Innova to have not been treating him well.
Yeah, I have two kind of big takeaways from this. The first one is exactly what you were saying. I think this is a concerning thing for Innova. Part of it is we're having to read between the lines a little bit here.
Right.
James is giving us a slight glimpse into his time at Innova, but if I'm a player of James's skill level, which there is not a ton, but if you're getting up there as like a top tour level pro, but you're not like the top yet, you're at James's level, where you're like in the top 10, 15 to 5th is kind of where I've put James, somewhere in that range. And when you're getting there and you're hearing James saying he's leaving Innova because he didn't feel valued, he didn't feel like all this stuff, and he felt like other companies were offering him more and valuing him more, and then your contract's running up, it's going to be hard for you to look at Innova as like I want to be there type of a thing.
Yeah.
Because as much as they might promise you up front, you're going to be looking at why do we see James leaving? Why did Paul leave a few years ago? Why did Thomas Gilbert just leave?
And
why is Scott Withers leaving?
Those players will talk about it to each other too. Like that'll get around,
Sorry, that was really bugging me. Yeah, no, and that's the thing is if James is talking about this to media,
yeah,
I'm sure he's going into a lot more detail with his friends.
Well, exactly.
And so I think that to me was the most biggest takeaway for me. Wasn't as much a huge thing. This is a huge deal for MVP and for James. But I didn't really take away as much from their deal because the deal's almost been done before. But I took a lot away from, this is the first time we've kind of seen between that. We saw Nate Perkins comment about and that might have actually been in reference to James, now looking way back on it. Comment about, if you're treating your pros better, maybe you keep more of them type of a thing. We've seen this multiple different times. And so to see this pattern kind of emerging, that spells trouble for me because it looks like Innova, I don't think they're ever going to lose Germ. I don't think they're ever going to lose Nate. I don't think they're ever losing Barsby. Ricky, it'd be hard for him to find a place to go if he left Innova. Not like hard for him to find, but hard to find a place that like he can fit in really well because
he went back around the block at this point.
What?
He's been around the block.
Yeah,
at this point.
If he went back to Latitude or back to Prodigy, like Latitude would welcome him back with open arms, I would imagine, as far as having that guy back. Discraft, I feel like he couldn't really go because, which Ricky's not going anywhere. I don't even know why I'm talking about this. But also Prodigy already has their guys. So I would expect that they're not going to lose Ricky either. But I think it's going to be harder and harder for them to add players to that roster is where I think it hurts them more. Mm-hmm. The second big thing I took from this is seeing Conrad kind of get what's almost been dubbed like the Macbeth deal. Because I think Paul's kind of the first to do it. We've now seen Chris Dickerson with the FX2 get to design his own disc to a certain degree. We've seen Paige design her own line of discs. And now we're seeing Conrad, where Conrad is involved in the design process of his own line of discs. That's a big takeaway for me because people are seeing it's working. Do you think that this is something that other companies continue to try to replicate down the line? Like, is this a big part of players' contracts going forward?
Yeah, it's a no-brainer for me because companies are already going to make new discs, right? Like, they're going to make them. So why on earth would you not make that disc and be like, oh, and we did this in collaboration with a pro that you already know and love?
Yeah.
Like, it's just like free marketing. You could say that. You could just kind of ask the pro a couple questions about the disc before you make it and just say it was part their design and it's already going to help it sell. It's interesting because I'm trying to think. of like other examples, like okay, so another example of this would be in hockey, like hockey sticks. If you buy a hockey stick at a store, most likely you're going to see a name on the shaft of that stick, and that name is specific to the curve of that stick, because pros have curves that they specifically design for their hockey sticks to do certain things, and just having that name on a stick helps sell that stick. Ball golf doesn't really do this, although I know that they do occasionally do collaborations with players, but it's not something I've seen a ton. But to me, it's a no-brainer, because it's like, if Discraft's like, okay, we're going to make a new driver mold, why would they just like make the mold when they can be like, we designed this mold with Paul Macbeth to make the best driver for his game? Like, it's just like the easiest marketing tactic ever. It makes sense for that player. It makes sense for everybody. I think it's just, it's a no-brainer.
Well, I think the way to go about it is more the Prodigy way, if I'm being honest with you, because the Prodigy way, if you look at the FX2, it doesn't say Chris's name. Okay. But it was heavily marketed that this was a Chris Dickerson design disc. Like, Chris helped design what he wanted.
Yeah.
And when Chris is with Prodigy, he's throwing it. Why I think that's smarter is that FX2 is Prodigy's, and it's always going to be Prodigy's. If Chris ever left Prodigy, there's no confusing rebrand or anything like that.
Right.
If Paul somehow ended up leaving Discraft, the PM line of discs is a very confusing situation.
Sure, yeah.
I don't think that's ever going to happen, but if he did, you could see how if this was replicated over and over, that might eventually happen.
That makes sense.
To where, the Zeus, what are you going to do? Are you going to keep the Zeus? Are you going to rebrand it? Because like it's got Paul's name on it, the PM line on it. Like,
I agree with like
that's a tough one.
You would have to keep their names off of the disc unless they were like locked down for a very long time.
Because like with Conrad, he has a 2-year deal. He said he wants this to be a long-term thing, but Johnny Disc Golf did ask him like, so what happens if you left MVP? Like, what happens to those molds? And he basically was like, we didn't talk about it a ton. He's like, but basically I think it would be something of like, these are MVP's intellectual properties. Like, I worked with them. He's like, so I would imagine it would be something of them buying me out, like my royalties out from that disc to continue making the molds type of a thing. It's basically how Conrad was explaining it. So that's where I think it's smarter to kind of go the Prodigy route of having, the players attached to it, and you always market it with that player. But when the rubber meets the road, it's just a Prodigy disc. Right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that if it's going to be replicated over and over, I think that's the smarter way to go. I think Discraft, the way they did it, makes sense because like, Paul's not switching again.
Right.
And so they're very confident that like Paul's locked down with them. And so it's a no-brainer for them. And I'm sure the details of his contract go into stuff like that of like what would happen. But I do think that moving forward, if that continues to be offered to players, I think it's smarter to kind of go the Prodigy route for 99% of sponsorship things with them.
I would agree.
Another news story that actually just broke today, which if you're listening to this is yesterday, is we've heard from Simon, and Simon has made it official that he will not be starting this season. He basically has his ongoing elbow injury that we saw, kind of plague him throughout all of last year. It seemed like, I know with COVID, it might have just been the second half of the year, but it's been going on for a while. Yeah. He said basically after months of going to the gym, and the guy at Disc Golf Strong, Seth Munsey, hooked him up with a really good physical therapist. He said he was it was in Boston, I believe, and he said like in the physical therapy, like he was literally working out next to MLB players. Like, these people knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
He hooked him up with them. After months of doing that, they tried to get him back to throwing, and it just wasn't happening. He basically said he was throwing under 60 miles an hour. It was feeling good. He got about 5 throws in at 65 plus miles an hour, and it just was hurting his arm, and so he didn't even try a forehand because it just was too bad. He couldn't throw. So now they've reevaluated, and they've decided that they're going to try just doing nothing. He's going to go to the gym, but he's going to basically work core and lower body. And then they said some minor tricep exercises just to keep his arm engaged. But basically, other than that, there's no activity at all for 3 weeks. And they're going to slowly build him back up, throwing over 8 weeks. So this puts him at April, coming back to being full. If this works perfectly, April, he's back to full strength. And he said he's not sure yet if he'll jump right back into tour or if he's going to play some local stuff first and then hop on tour in May.
Yeah, I mean, he must be dealing with some baseball guys, which it makes sense. I mean, elbow injuries in baseball are like, it's like turkey and Thanksgiving at this point. But it kind of sounds like the same model where basically, they're going to shut him down and then slowly bring him back. And then like in baseball, they would do like rehab starts for minor league teams. That's almost like it's what it sounds like with like the local touring. I read the article and when I was reading, I was like, does this guy not like need like Tommy John surgery? Does he have like a ligament tear? But then it mentioned that he had MRIs and they were inconclusive, and they just kind of said it was overuse, which to me just sounds kind of like tennis elbow almost, which can be nasty. I'm not like trying to say it's nothing.
Yeah.
And like in that case, the only thing you can do is you just have to stop and give it a rest. But I mean, I used to have elbow injuries with baseball all the time, and they're the worst. So my heart goes out to Simon for that.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen this some coming up of, I think maybe, I'm sure this has happened for years, but I think it's just now where we're starting to see it kind of happen more and more as players are throwing harder, throwing farther, and constantly playing. We saw like Yuli's knee injury. Paul had a knee injury in back years ago. We now see Simon's elbow. I would include Eagle's hand, but that's not really a use injury. That was... that was just it's
kind of on him.
The ground's kind of tough injury. But I mean, in general, I think that this is something that will hopefully start to be more and more of an eye opener to players. We actually saw the Pro Tour kind of move in the right direction and committing to having Disc Golf Strong Seth being at all Pro Tour events. He's going to be in the warm up area, helping players warm up and stuff.
Yeah.
Because one thing about disc golf that I feel like I can say pretty confidently is a lot of players do not take warming up seriously. And I am definitely one of them. But like at the end of the day, the throwing motion in disc golf is pretty violent. You know what I mean?
It is. It's not, I'll say it's not nearly, disc golf throwing is not nearly as bad on your body as like throwing a baseball, for example. Like the arm motion. Now I'm talking about the backhand. The forehand motion is very elbow heavy. I mean, there are guys that make a living off their forehand. I think a lot of the guys that are better forehand players are more wrist than anything, and that kind of saves them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's no kidding that like playing disc golf, your body is very involved in the throw, and it's kind of almost shocking that injuries aren't more common.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think as courses continue to get longer, as pros are continuing to push themselves, trying to be able to throw farther, get better, I think that one of the big things kind of that's coming next to the sport is going to be that bigger focus on players' bodies. We've started to hear it more and more. To be honest with you, when Disc Golf Strong launched, I thought the guy's a genius. Seth. I don't know. I don't.
Ahead of it.
I would say I don't know much about like his actual physical therapy background and stuff like that. I'm not calling him a genius for that. I'm calling him a genius for branding himself as the guy to go to, because he could basically see like no one's doing this yet. They're going to do it eventually, and I can position myself to be the guy. So huge props to him because it's paying off now. So he's I don't know if he fully makes a living doing this. I don't know much about him at all, to be honest, but I know the Pro Tour has got to be paying him to be out every single weekend out there.
Oh, sure.
And he's positioning himself to be the go-to guy. When you get hurt or when you're trying to warm up, he's the guy you go to, even for AMs. You know, if you're going to, you can go to him and learn different warm-up routines, strength conditioning, all that stuff. And I think as the sport becomes more and more serious and there's more and more pros that are touring full-time, I think this is something that we're going to start seeing more and more, not necessarily the injuries, but the focus on players' bodies. And I thought it was very interesting how much detail Simon went in of like, look, it's not like this is for lack of trying. Like I've been in the gym 5 days a week for months. I've been doing this. It's just not working. So this is very interesting to me, and I think it's something that we're probably going to see more of going forward. Not necessarily more injuries, but you'll be able to tell more and more players are taking the physical side of disc golf a little more seriously.
Yeah, absolutely.
We just recently released an article over on, well, by we, I mean me, over on our website. It was a blog basically talking about who I saw as the winners and the losers of the offseason. And I figured that makes for a pretty great podcast topic now that we are kind of done with the offseason for what we know.
Yeah, I can't think of anything.
I'd be surprised if more players made any changes. But basically what I want to do here is have this just be a segment, winners and losers of the offseason right now. I'm going to read a company name. You tell me if you think they're a winner or a loser. And then, if you want to go into why, go for it. If not, then that's fine too. If you just want to say they won or they lost, you can go into why, and then I'll give my opinion on it as well. And then you can find more detailed version of my opinion on our website. But let's start it off with MVP.
MVP, probably the most obvious win, or one of the more obvious wins. Definitely a winner. James Conrad, their first like star power type player. People's perception, they have a really good chance to change the like average disc golfer's perception on MVP Plastic if they have a guy who is like possibly winning Elite Series events throwing MVP, and who is just a graceful guy to watch throw the disc.
Yeah. Just
really fun to watch. So big win.
Yeah, I actually put MVP as my biggest winner. I think that they won the offseason hands down because like you were saying, the perception thing is so big with MVP. Like, I know I have talked to so many players because I've felt and thrown some MVP stuff. They make a great product. Like, their plastic is extremely comfortable in the hand. Mm-hmm. Their discs fly really well. And when I mention it to a different player and I'm like, dude, I've actually like tried some MVP stuff. I really like it.
Yeah.
I've literally had people laugh at me because they're like, and then I'm like, why? Like, what's so funny about MVP? And they're like, that's just for rec players, man. Like, rec players just think it makes them throw farther and stuff. I'm like, well, have you ever thrown it? And they're like, no. I think that's the big thing. Is like, it turned into this brand that everyone thinks it's for rec players because somewhere along the line there was a claim that it makes you throw farther. And I think that having a pro that is well respected, everyone knows is good. Mm-hmm. And if he's able to get onto lead cards and have a good season and people can start seeing what MVP Plastic can do, I think it can change a lot of minds. And I think that this could be like something that bumps MVP into like that next tier.
Yeah.
Because once James does it, they might be able to sign 2 or 3 more, bigger name pros. To me, this is a massive win. They didn't have a huge offseason as far as amount of players, but being able to sign a top tier pro like that is huge. The next one on my list, Discraft.
Discraft winner. They got one of the Mandahano sisters, Alexis. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Solid pickup. Mostly they were able to retain, but then what really kind of, honestly, they probably would have been maybe a loser just because they didn't do much until the Ezra signing.
Yeah.
The Ezra signing made them a winner because Ezra's a great signing. Very low risk, high ceiling type signing. So that's what makes them a winner for me.
Yeah, I agree. I had him as a winner as well. I think that they lost Austin Hannum is probably the most notable name that they lost this year, but they were able to replace him with Scott Withers, who I think if you put their games next to each other skill-wise, they're pretty similar. Hannum has a more recognizable name because he's on tour more, but I think Withers, if he tours, will have just as much, if not more, recognizable name. And they were able to pick up Alexis, but definitely the thing that put him over the edge was, A, they didn't lose any of their top tour like team players, as far as like the Pauls, Page, Brody, yada yada, and they were able to pick up Ezra. Mm-hmm. That kind of put it over the edge. It was a pretty obvious win for me. Now, what about, people probably know what we're about to say for this one, but what about Innova?
They were a loser for this offseason. Their team kind of bled, right? They lost Thomas Gilbert. They lost James Conrad. They lost Scott Withers. Anybody else I'm missing? I feel like there's one more I'm missing. Alexis Mandahano, which it's a loss. They're still holding on to a decent team. They still have a lot of good FPO players. And obviously they have Ricky, but they just were not making really any splashes in the offseason. When you're like considered the biggest company, the biggest name in disc golf, and you don't make any splashes in the offseason, not even really an attempt to, it seemed like, then yeah, it's a loss.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the thing that surprised me was like, I think they lost a player to almost every major manufacturer. They lost Scott Withers to Discraft. Mm-hmm. They lost James Conrad to MVP. They lost Thomas Gilbert to Prodigy.
Yeah.
I guess they didn't lose one to Trilogy that I know of.
Yeah.
But they did lose Madison Walker as well, and we don't know. She hasn't really re-signed with anyone. And they didn't pick anyone up, which was, to be honest with you, pretty shocking to me. There was a few different players that were out there on the market that they could have picked up, but they didn't. And so, yeah, I think that's a pretty obvious loss in my head. Now, these next few are kind of up in the air a little bit, so I'm very interested to hear your take. First one being Discmania.
Discmania is very close, like either way. I'm going to say they're a win because they were probably in big danger of losing Eagle McMahon this year. I'm sure Eagle was fielding big offers from other companies because he was the most high profile free agent. So just keep holding on to Eagle McMahon alone was, a very big deal. And then secondly, and this might even be was almost as just as big of a deal as they were able to extend Kyle Klein. Yeah. Early enough in his career that with his brand loyalty was probably a done deal. I'm sure he wasn't going anywhere, but like Kyle Klein is a future star. So like that for me, like the fact they were able to hold on to their two biggest assets right now, and obviously they still have Simon on, which is, good for their brand as well. Like they're still working with a solid team right now.
Yeah, I think that. So my answer in the article and my answer right now is a win for the reasons you listed. But I think there's another side of this where they lost, and that is the actual manufacturing side. So this article and this topic is just about player signing. That's a win. But we recently saw Discmania come out, and basically they haven't had their originals line, which is the PD, the DD, the P2, MD. Everything Discmania, at least in my head, is kind of known for. Their new line, the active line and the evolution line, are great. We have some molds in the store here, and they feel amazing. They feel great. Certainly, don't get me wrong.
Certainly. But
they don't feel like Discmania to me. When I think Discmania, I think of the classic molds. Mm-hmm. Those were basically discontinued for a long time. And then right now, basically, UC put out a statement in the collectors group, and he might have put it some other places, that they're basically bringing 5 back in 2022. Because if you don't know about Discmania, Innova makes the originals line. Latitude 64 makes basically the evolution line. I think Yikun or something makes the active line. There's a third one in there. I don't know exactly the third one. But Latitude and Innova are making most of their plastic. And so with Innova and the COVID shutdowns, Innova was focusing on Innova and just didn't really crank out much for anything for Discmania. Mm-hmm. And it looks like that's still the plan going forward. Is Innova's like, we're focusing on our stuff. So to me, that's a big loss for Discmania because there's a lot of revenue that they're going to be missing out on because there's a lot of people dying for P2s, FD3s, MD3s, what's
really
the
Cloudbreaker,
DD3s. There's a lot of people dying for that stuff. Yeah. And they can't fulfill it because they're not a manufacturer themselves. So from that aspect, they're a loss. But from the player aspect, I counted them as a win because I think you're right. Being able to keep Eagle is a massive win because they could have lost him this year, especially with everything going on with what I just said about the original lines and stuff.
Yes.
This next one, near and dear to your heart. We forgot to talk about this. There's a massive signing. Trevor is now a team member of Team Dynamic Discs.
Yep.
Which, unfortunately, might be their biggest signing this year. Yeah. I'm just kidding. But yeah, Dynamic Discs, winner or loser this offseason?
Oh, man. It gets tougher now, huh? Doesn't it? I mean, I've got to keep my journalistic integrity. They lost the offseason. Now, does Dynamic still have a decent team that they've held on to? Yeah. Don't get me wrong, they do. But I think Dynamic, more than almost anybody, was really striving to sign a big name. And I don't even think it's their fault because I'm sure they offered players and it just didn't quite fall their way. The big names just didn't. I do think it's coming. Like, I think Dynamic is going to get their person. They're going to get a player, whether it be a big FPO or MPO player in coming years because, bias aside, like their marketing and their branding is so solid. Yeah. And they make a good product. Trilogy Plastic is good stuff. So I think it's just a matter of time. But in this case, because they weren't able to bring in, any names to really make a splash in the news, then I would consider it a loss.
Yeah, I also said it was a loss. I agree with you. I think their time's coming for that big name. But they were able to keep their team where they have Zach Melton, Eric Oakley, Chris Clemens. I'm sure Paige Shue, Grady Shue. I'm sure I'm overlooking some, but they have players that can go out there and make some noise on tour. Yeah. But they just don't have that face of the brand. Like they don't have this is our guy. All of our chips are here. And I think that's why I'm going to count them as a loss is because there were players on the table this year that could have been that person. Yeah. Ezra, Eagle, James Conrad. I mean, heck, even I thought Thomas Gilbert was going to Dynamic for sure, and he ended up not. There's a lot of players that I think could have ended up there, and Eric Oakley commented possibly on your post actually, and someone was talking about that, how like there wasn't a big signing. He said, well, it wasn't for lack of trying, basically alluding like, you really think we didn't offer these people?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Sometimes it just comes down to,
Yeah. I think that the one they were probably closest to signing would have been James Conrad, but I think that at the end of the day, it was just MVP needed it more, so they probably were willing to like risk a lot more over it.
Probably.
Than Dynamic. Because, and one of the bigger losses for Dynamic that's being overlooked is Robert McCall.
Yeah.
Because if you look at Dynamic, we've talked about this before, Dynamic is doing something really well that they aren't their marketing isn't relying on players, which can be looked at as a pro and a con. They market their players well. Players come in town all the time. They're constantly going live, doing stuff with them. But a lot of their core stuff on YouTube and stuff is in-house. So then year round, they're able to keep podcasts going, do videos and stuff like that. They don't have to rely on only when players are coming in town.
Really good media team.
I don't remember how I started that. But, Robert McCall. Yeah. Duh. Losing a piece of that in Robert McCall, I think, might actually hurt them. It was for a good reason. He's moving closer to family and stuff. It wasn't like there's bad blood, but that is going to kind of hurt them to a certain degree because they're going to have to find a way to replace him. It might be making Danny more involved or Anthony or something like that. But it's definitely, I think this offseason, as far as like players go specifically, you got to count it as a loss for them.
Yeah. Now
I'm going to group these next two together because A, for time, because I'm getting bored. And B, for they didn't really either do anything.
Yeah, well,
Latitude and West Side.
I think you can always when you're focusing on just players, you can almost group them in with Dynamic as kind of just like a scratch, like a wash. Like they didn't really lose anybody, they didn't really gain anybody. So yeah, it's just kind of. I in my mind, I'd consider that a loss, but not a big loss.
Yeah, I put them both neutral because they both have the different. Why I put them neutral and Dynamic as a loss on my personal list online was simply because Westside and Latitude both have that face of the brand type player. Nico and Emerson, and even Rebecca Cox, Albert Tam, Kristen Tatar. Yeah, they're all on Latitude or Westside. And they were able to keep him. Mm-hmm. Nico actually signed an extension, so if you want to get really technical, you could probably push Westside towards a win. But I put them both neutral because like they missed out on the opportunity to sign some big players, but they also didn't lose any of their big players. So like, is it really a win or a loss? Nah.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right. You could probably put all the trilogy together and call it a wash. Because they were able to keep their players that are pushing their plastic, but they sadly weren't able to bring in any new ones. So last big one, and then there's one little small one. Last big one's Prodigy.
Prodigy's a win. Austin Hanneman, Thomas Gilbert it's not like a huge win. Like those are both two like solid signings. You know, two more guys that are gonna be carrying your discs. It's a win. Yeah,
I put Prodigy as a win for a number of reasons. I think when I did the totals, they were able to sign 6 new players and then sign 6 current players to extensions.
Yeah, I feel like Prodigy's gaining a little momentum.
Yeah, Prodigy's starting to pick up a little bit. Hot take Hannum, you either love him or hate him. Either way, you know his name. He went to Prodigy. Thomas Gilbert going might not be a massive signing. I think their biggest signing was actually being able to re-up Chris Dickerson, which that happened in the middle of the summer. But regardless, keeping him on, I think, is bigger than adding some other players because him and Kevin Jones plus Katrina Allen, I mean,
really good team.
You've got a killer squad there.
Yeah.
So I think Prodigy, there's no way you could say that it wasn't a win this offseason. And the final one I put was actually DGA, which there's not really much debate here because I just wanted to call it a win because they were able to pick up Trevor Harbolt and Noah Miensma and re-sign Matt Bell. None of those players are massive and going to make a ton of noise on tour, but each of them could kind of pop in and out of some coverage here and there.
Yeah.
And
good guys to have.
They're decent names for a relatively small brand.
Sure.
So I thought that I put them down as a win just because there was some news regarding them this offseason. I feel like they were talked about more than
kept on Shasta Chris for his 25th season or whatever.
Shasta Chris, he must have some like stake in there or something.
Yeah.
But now it is time for the fan favorite segment. You already know what's coming. The one and only Trevor's Trivia. And if you're curious, we are going to talk about the 4th major after Trevor's Trivia.
Yes.
There's a lot of spicy stuff coming up.
All right. So today's game we're going to be calling faster or slower. I'm going to read you. It's simple. I'm going to read you a mold. And all you have to tell me is it faster or slower? I don't need the number or anything. Just faster or slower.
Well, yeah, but that's
start out pretty easy, and then it's going to get difficult.
Okay, let's hear it.
We're going to start off with a baseline as the destroyer. The destroyer, do you know what speed the destroyer is?
12.
It's a 12 speed. Okay, so that's our baseline. So then we'll just see how far you can get. Okay, next disc is the crank.
Technically faster, but it shouldn't be.
Okay, correct. The crank is a 13 speed.
Yeah.
Next disc is the Punisher.
Same. Slower.
There's not going to be any of those.
There's none of the same?
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure that's like...
It's 12 speed.
The Punisher is 12 speed?
Yes.
So it is the same?
The crank's a 13 speed.
Oh, then the one before it.
Yes.
I was going back to the Destroyer.
No,
okay.
It's a continuous line.
That's why I said same. I was going back to the Destroyer. You threw me off when you said the Destroyer is the baseline. We're all based off that.
Start with.
Okay. Slower. Because I was going to say it's 12.503.
We're going off of the Punisher now.
Okay. Yep.
Into the Sapphire.
Slower.
It's 10. Then we're going into Squall.
Squall's a 6 or 7, so slower.
Correct. It's a 6. And then we go into, it's where it gets difficult.
You shouldn't be telling me the speed, because that's going to help me. You should let me, like, when I say Squall, if you just leave me guessing if it's a 6 or 7.
Well,
I'm just saying, I think that's going to make it, I think that's going to make it harder for me.
Anyways, it's going to get hard because you're not going to know these molds. Next, we have the Mentor.
The frick is that? Can you tell me the brand?
It's part of the Instinct line.
Okay, so I'm gonna just say it's a mid. So I'm gonna say it's a 5-speed. I'm gonna say it's slower.
Wrong.
What the heck is the Mentor?
It's an 11 speed.
Great.
Well, you lost, but I'll let you keep going.
You normally give me a little bit of room for error.
I figured you would try and analyze the name a little bit more.
How on earth? What does a Mentor mean to 11 speed?
I don't know.
How would I analyze? All right, the
next
name
disc is the Felon.
Slower. It's a 9 speed.
Yeah, and then we have the Vengeance.
What brand is that? Gateway? No. The Vengeance. Is that Legacy? Legacy stuff's always fast, so fast.
Yeah.
It's probably like 17 speed.
And then we have the H1V2.
Slower.
No.
Is the H1V2 technically a 10 speed?
That's an 11.
Oh, that's criminal.
You didn't want me to give you the speed.
That's criminal.
I know.
I wouldn't care. The H1V2 is a 9 speed, and they can't. This is why the PDGA. This is
why I made this game, because I knew you.
This is why the PDGA needs to be the people that are assigning the speed to this disc. Hold a H1V2 next to a Thunderbird and try to look me straight in the eyes and tell me it's a different speed. Hold a PD next to a Thunderbird and try to tell me they're a different speed.
Hold an Onyx next to it.
Yeah, frick. Hold a Crank next to a freaking Destroyer.
Right. Anyways, next disc
Criminal.
is the Sorcerer. No, it's not the Criminal. It's the Sorcerer.
Oh, you're a funny guy over here. Gosh. Trevor has been bringing dad jokes back
bad.
In a hot way for some... Okay, that sounded weird. Okay, Sorcerer sounds like an 11 or 12 speed.
Even more. But yeah, it's faster. Next, we have the Insanity from Axiom Discs.
Slower. It's a 9 speed.
Wow, you knew it. Then we have the Beast.
10 speed faster.
Then we have the Wraith.
11 speed faster.
All right, there you go. You did it.
Why would you finish with Beast and Wraith?
I finished with Beast and Wraith because I didn't know that you'd be able to get them. Because like
Beast and Wraith?
I was pretty convinced for a second that the Beast was a 9 and the Wraith was a 10. And I threw Race and Beast a lot.
The Wraith is the exact same flight numbers as the Destroyer, but it's 11 speeds. 11.5, -1.3.
Yeah, for some reason, sometimes I get it caught in my mind that
the Destroyer's faster. Where that game, if a disc has ever been on our site, I typed in the flight numbers.
Yeah.
So, like, there's a lot of...
That's why I picked some that
like, the ones that haven't been on our site, I'm clueless. But the H1V2, there's sometimes I make up my own flight numbers, what they should be. I've done that multiple times.
I've gotten emails about that.
Yeah.
Because they're like, you might want to correct this.
And I'm like, no.
Like, sorry, that's our boss. He gets a little carried away.
I mean, I still, to this day, will never understand why disc manufacturers aren't sending discs in to the PDGA, and the PDGA is sending it back.
I don't know why you're getting so triggered. Just throw the disc for yourself and decide how fast it is.
It's not for me.
Who cares?
It's not for me.
Who's
People at home are...
Beginners, they'll figure it out.
The amount of times that I have heard, like, oh, frick, dude, I've got to throw the Crank, it's a 13 speed. I've got to throw the blah, 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 it's a 13 speed.
What are you saying?
Over 12 speed. Like, oh, it's going to go so much farther. It's speed faster. And like the Thrasher.
The Crank goes further.
The Thrasher being a freaking, well, that's only because of the flight path.
No, even if it's beat in.
You're insane.
Continue.
Then everyone will be throwing a crank, Trevor.
No, they wouldn't.
Yeah.
Because it's different.
It's the same speed as a nuke.
It's a different
nuke's
feel.
13 speed. You're telling me the nuke and the crank are the same speed?
I throw all the distance drivers.
Okay, I know you do. Feel them. You're telling me the crank and the nuke are the same speed.
It depends with the side speed. I don't think rim width is
rim
the
width
ultimate.
The side speed.
I don't know if that's the ultimate decider of how far a disc goes, though.
It's not how far. None of the numbers are how far a disc goes. It's the amount of speed that it takes to get it to its true flight numbers, which is purely decided by the rim width.
Is it purely decided with rim width, though?
That's how it's always been explained.
By who?
The people put it. Exactly. Why aren't the PDGA the ones doing it? It's ridiculous that, like, I can make a putter.
I just don't think it's a big
You know what?
deal.
Screw it. We're making a putter. Foundation. This isn't actually going to happen. Foundation's making a putter, and I'm calling it an 18 speed. I'm calling it 18.5, negative 10.2, and it's going to be the most overstable putter you've ever seen. And people are going to be like, why are the flight numbers that? And I'm going to say, because screw flight numbers.
I do agree. Like, this whole hydrogen loft putter thing.
Yeah, one speed putter.
Their whole marketing campaign is the fact that it's one speed when, like, anybody can make a putter and call it one speed.
Yeah.
Like, they're like, why are you not putting with a one speed putter? Why would you use 2 or 3? Like, because it doesn't matter.
Flight speeds also, why. I mean, flight numbers also should just be like.
So dumb.
Why are we using flight numbers? Flight numbers, if you're looking at
Let's talk about the worst flight number of all is glide. Why does glide only go from like 2 to 6?
I've seen
like,
a one glide disc.
Okay, from like 1 to 6. Like, why does it not like an equal scale of like 1 to like? Why isn't everything 1 to 10? Like, I don't even understand why flight numbers
and
how can
turn be positive?
Yeah, flight numbers are so random.
If you can use flight numbers,
if turn negative means it goes this way, how can it turn positive? That would be fade.
Yeah, like, the fade just
what's happening?
The fade just starts
turn
earlier.
upside down. Like, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
flight numbers are the worst, but I don't care.
You can use them within the same brand, but especially if
you
you've ever thrown a West Side disc. Liars.
Oh, I saw Jort on Facebook throwing a stag and it said 03 and he turned it over like it was nothing. I was like, what's that?
There was a disc, I forget what disc it is, but it was basically like a 12.503 from West Side, and I got it as like a newer player, and I was like, this is gonna be great. It's a destroyer, but it's in Trilogy plastic. Roller. Like, it was a heat, dude. It was literally like
I bought destroyers that roll, so that could just be that you got a fluke.
No, because I read online, everyone was talking about how flippy it was. And the explanation is like, well, we tested in Sweden. And I'm like, this is why it should all be tested in one place. Because now people in Sweden are going to be getting destroyers and confused like crazy because they're like, why is this so much more stable than my
I just think,
King?
They should just use descriptive words maybe instead of flight
on the
numbers.
stamp?
Like,
this disc will turn for more
just when you
advanced
buy
player.
it, just call it a stable distance driver. And compare it to your other molds. The whole flight numbers thing is weird.
Great idea, turned horribly
It's gone so wrong.
Flight numbers gone wrong. Ultimate clickbait. All right. Well, that wasn't planned. Welcome to the PDGA's fourth major.
The Champions League.
The Champions Cup.
I know.
Site of all the controversy you could ever want in the disc golf world.
Paul Ulibarri almost had a breakdown on Smashbox.
All right, let me explain what this is first, and then we're going to get into a whole lot with it. So, the PDGA has announced its plans for a fourth major in April of 2022, the Champions Cup.
Yes.
The format, 4 rounds of stroke play. Then, you weren't expecting it then, were you?
Whoa.
Then 2 rounds of match play featuring the top 4 MPO and the top 4 FPO from stroke play to decide the winner. Basically, number 1 plays 4, 2 plays 3, winners face off. So this has led to number of players being very upset. First and foremost, leading the charge has been Paul Ulibarri on Smashbox. He was extremely frustrated with it. Basically, he was like, I support the PDGA. I'm going to play in the event. But why are they trying to make this some type of joke or circus? Or I think he even at one point said, like, have your field day major. You know, basically called it a joke. Paul Macbeth has expressed similar dislike on Facebook comments with a funny GIF and also in person. I didn't ask him if I could use what he was talking about it in person, but he basically by his Facebook comment, you can tell he doesn't like it. Vanessa Van Dyken said the format makes her feel weird. And then Yuli said he is yet to find a pro that is excited for this event and is rather upset that as a chair member of the Players Association, he didn't get any heads up or a chance to give PDGA feedback before they went public with this event. So, first things first, Trevor, thoughts on just the format?
I keep going back and forth, man. Even I'm just sitting here trying to decide my stance. when I first heard it, I was like, that's so cool. Like, we get stroke play and then because like, I love match play and I love the idea of these duels. So, like, I was like, finally, some match play. I was like, yeah, this is great. And then people started complaining about it and I got to think about it more. And I was like, okay, yeah, for a major, it's a little whack. Like, why are we doing 4 entire rounds of golf that they are to qualify, but like it seems like a lot of golf that for the scores to get reset. It's a lot of golf to be played. But then if you don't do enough rounds, then it's not enough to decide who the best players are. So like, I'm starting to think the whole stroke play into match play thing is dumb, especially for a major. My number one complaint, the majors. I agree with Paul Ulibarri. The majors should just be stroke play. Now, with that being said, I still am a big fan of match play, so I do want there to be a big match play event. But I don't want it to be a major, and I want it to just be like, take like 64 of the best players and throw them into a giant match play tournament. Because I agree that match play, Terry and Yuli were getting pretty fired up about how like it could be fluky. And I agree, match play, like the best player is not always going to win. And we don't want that for a major. That's fine for just a normal event. For a major, yeah, we don't really want that because we don't want to just random major winners, So yeah, when I first heard the format, I was like, that's gonna be so fun to watch. And do I still think it's gonna be fun to watch? Yeah, it'll be fun to watch. But I understand where the players are coming from. And the more I think about it, the more I'm like, we really shouldn't do this. It's not the best. It's not good for the sport. We really shouldn't do it.
So my feelings have not changed at all. I love the format. Okay,
you greedy fan.
I think it's going to make for some super competitive and exciting to watch golf. There's going to be 4 rounds. We get to watch a full tournament of golf. And then, if Paul's pulling ahead, Paige, Ricky, whoever's done it before where they pull way ahead, it resets.
That's messed up.
Because they qualified.
That's messed up.
And then we get to go into, let me finish talking.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because then we get to go into match play that they just qualified for, and we get to watch them duke it out. Now, what I will say is I agree that this probably shouldn't be a major. But if it wasn't a major, how are you going to get any players there? But no, I agree. This shouldn't be a major. I agree with that statement because
cash. That's how cash money.
True.
Make it a pro tour stop even.
Okay, no, I don't think that this should be
or
a like
tour
top tier.
Thing.
Yeah, it could be like PDGA or Pro Tour endorsed. Something where we get to see it. It's gonna be super fun to watch.
I don't think there's a problem with there being like a one match play event. Literally just one. That's a big deal. Like, why can't
I just don't think that this should be
ball golf.
A major. Is all I'm saying.
No, I agree. But like, I think there could be a match play event that's a big deal.
I think they just wanted to make something different. My thing is,
I think
as a major, this is always going to be tainted.
Yeah,
like you're always going to be like, oh, you won that joke of a major. Oh yeah, oh you won the Champions Cup.
Yeah, the fact that people
this guy's not really a major winner.
The fact that people are already laughing at it like that means, as a PDGA, you need to just go back to the drawing board and just draw up.
A lot of the outrage, I don't understand, because a lot of the outrage hasn't been strictly towards it being a major. A lot of the outrage I've seen from players and fans is at the format, and they're like, you're just ripping it from these players. Like, they play 4 rounds, the winner's decided, then you rip it. No. They know full well what they're signing up for. They know we're playing 4 rounds to qualify for match play.
Yeah.
Strokes do not matter in this tournament other than to qualify you for match play. It's not like I showed up today, we played a video, we get to hole 17, and you're like, and we're going to reset and throw off on hole 18. Then I'd be ticked. But if that was the challenge and I agreed to the challenge, then who cares? We said yeah.
I see your point, and I agree. Like, it's not like you don't. If the format is you don't win by winning the stroke play, then you can't feel like you got ripped from you. But I do feel like it would leave a super weird taste in all the audience's mouth, really, if like some guy wins by 15 in the stroke play and then loses in the match
Then why
play.
don't we have a weird taste in our mouth for the Pro Tour Championship?
I do.
Okay, well, there you go.
The
only weird taste I have for the Pro Tour Championship is that the top level pros didn't get to practice all week.
Right, that's it right there.
Well, then they get to practice all week.
Yeah, but no, this one is a different. This is a different format.
The scores reset.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think it's gonna be like if like we watch 4 straight days of some guy dominating and he's up by 20, and then we watch one day where he loses.
If he is dominating that much, he's not losing.
That's so not true. You know your game can change from day to day.
I'm just saying if he has 4 dominant days, 4 absolutely
dominant days. And then one guy has like 15 awesome holes of golf and beats him in the first round, even though he plays really well.
I thought match play was 9 holes.
No, if he won 15 holes, it'd be over. Like that match can end before. Like, no,
I thought it was only 9 holes.
It could be 18.
Oh, okay, cool. Regardless, I don't mind the format. I think that 4 rounds is too much. I think the only reason it's 4 rounds is I'm pretty sure majors have to have 4 rounds. I would like to see 3 or 2 if it's not a major.
The whole
because
thing,
like
they're just trying too hard.
I agree.
They're trying too hard.
There's no need. It's not broken. There's no need to fix something that's not broken.
Right.
Majors should all be stroke play. That's what you're playing all year. That's what determines the best player.
Yeah.
Period. I don't think that this should be a major, but I don't hate what the PDGA is trying to do as far as the tournament goes. The aspect of like coming up with our own like stroke play into match play hybrid. I like it.
If they're gonna, my thing is like, why if they're trying to do like different formats, which is fine, why aren't we consulting the players? Get your best players in a room. Like if Paul was there, he's not going to be upset at what they come up with if he's a big part of making it.
Well, that's one thing that I'm shocked by is it seems like the players found out, all of the players found out
when it was posted.
When we found out.
Yeah. What is that?
Like it seems like the only people that had input was it sounded like from Robert Leonard's interview and a few other people, the majors committee, the TD being Robert Leonard, and then Robert Leonard talked to some of the manufacturers to make sure they are going to be willing to sponsor it.
Yeah.
But at that point, it sounded like he didn't even know what the format was going to be. He was just making sure, like, hey, if I'm the TD, am I going to be able to get enough added cash for this to be a major? And people are like, oh, it's a major. Yeah, we'll support it. Yada, yada, yada. So it sounds like players weren't consulted in that.
Yeah.
At all.
That doesn't make any sense.
Which that makes no sense to me. I don't, especially something this big of a, if you just want to create a major and it's a stroke play major, of course the players don't have to get consulted. But if you're changing the game and like changing everything about how people are playing, it might be a good idea to at least talk to a few world champions, a few major winners, some people who have actually been there like recently and playing it. Might be a good idea to talk to them, make sure that they're supportive of the event, that they're going to play the event, because I'm sure if this continues to get closer and closer, part of me is like it's a major, everyone will be there. Another part of me is like I could see this being like a Pro Tour 2016 fiasco or whenever it was, where like people boycott it.
If the right people start boycotting it and it gains momentum, like they could lose everybody.
So that's my follow-up question: is do you think that this event, the way it is, the format it is going to happen?
No way.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Champions Cup will happen.
Yeah,
but I think it's either,
by the way, Champions Cup. That's sick.
I think it's either going to be the Champions Cup.
Good job on the name PDGA.
I think it's either going to be the Champions Cup as a stroke play major, or it's going to be Champion Cup in the current format as like an exhibition at some point throughout the year.
I think they just changed the stroke play.
Yeah, but no, I would be absolutely shocked if the PDGA kept it in the same format.
Yeah.
Could they potentially switch it to a full match play event and still call it a major? Maybe. I still don't think I would like it. I would
hate it less.
I just don't think that you can have a major winner that's different from the other major, especially if you want it to be prestigious, which I think all majors should.
Right.
It's hard to have a major be prestigious if it's different from ones that are already prestigious.
Right. I mean, no other sport has done anything like that. Whether it's tennis or golf or whatever. Yeah.
It sounds like a super fun format. It sounds like something that I would love to play in. I would also love to watch. I think that, if this goes down, I'm going to love it as a fan. It'll be fun to watch. But I feel like it's almost going to be, which this is no shot at Germ at all, but it's going to be kind of like his 2016 USDGC win where like...
And you get to play the rest of it?
Yeah. To where like, you won USDGC, you're US champion, but you still had another round. And Germ has said multiple times in interviews he wanted that final round to prove it. Because like even to him, it kind of feels...
His old Ricky was
This is going to be... Ricky was coming. This is going to be that on a whole nother level. Because it's like, well, you're a major winner, but it's that stupid match
you won
play.
the one that's a little bit
You won the
fluky.
championship. You won the Champions Cup, and you were down 16 strokes to Kevin Jones going into the match play.
Right.
Like, you really won. That's the type of stuff that's going to start being like, great job. You won 10 holes all weekend, bro. Like, you know what I mean? That's where it'll be interesting. So, no, I agree. I think that I'm willing to say there's a 0% chance that April 2022, we're all coming down on Appling, Georgia ready for 4 rounds of stroke play, 2 rounds match play.
Yeah.
But,
Match
crazier
play
things have happened.
WR Jackson match play. One guy hits a tree by 0.2 inches, kicks 50 feet. The next guy hits it smack on, and he wins. That's your world title.
Yeah, I think that it's definitely going to be interesting to see how it develops now that players are going to be giving their feedback.
Yeah.
What's happening right now, the public should not be aware of. This is what should have been happening right now.
Right, they should have told the players.
PDGA has decided, like, hey, this is what we're thinking about doing. We got the date set, we got all this. What do you guys think? And like posting it. I know the Pro Tour has a group that like all the players are in, and the Pro Tour regularly posts in it, like saying these are the changes we're thinking about making. This is going to affect you this way. They test stuff with players. Like, hey, we're thinking about doing this. We're thinking about doing this. We're thinking about moving the Pro Tour Championship when they did that 1 year. This is our new COVID protocols. Does anyone have any concerns? Before the public hears about it. Why that did not happen is beyond me. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like when Steve Dodge did the media thing a few years ago where it just wasn't tested, and then he started broadcasting Memorial, and it sucked. We're watching Memorial live with no post-production, and it wasn't tested before, and the quality's bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's what we're sitting through right now. But I think what's about to happen is players are going to start getting upset. They're going to start talking to the PDGA, talking to Nate Heinel and other board members and being like, what are you guys doing? Like, I might not play. I might do blah, blah, blah. I'm going to tell you how much I hate it. I'm still going to show up. I hope I win it, but, like, this sucks. Mm-hmm. And I would be shocked if the PDGA just sat back, crossed their arms, and was like, well, we're not changing it.
Yeah.
Because then you're going to start turning players, even AM players, where it's like, it's kind of our money being the added cash to this event, being that 25% that the PDGA adds, even like non-touring pros are going to be sitting there like, I'm part of my membership to the PDGA is going to this. Are you kidding me? Like, everyone is going to make their voice heard, and I think it's going to be a much more negative thing than a positive thing. And so the Champions Cup, if it happens, will be a stroke play event. This isn't going to happen.
Heard it here first.
And it's time to wrap the show up, paint Trevor in a scenario.
You never know where that sounds
and make that paint Trevor like like one of my French girls.
Here we go.
I was trying to think of the Titanic line that whole time, and I couldn't come up with it.
Nice.
That's it, right?
I don't know if it's French. Is it French?
Is it French?
Connor's confirmed
Connor's
it's French.
nodding his head drastically that yes, I was right.
Okay.
All right. Time to paint you. You're out here.
It is draw, not paint, though.
Is it draw?
Yeah, he draws.
Okay. Well, I can't draw you in this scenario.
You could, but paint me anyways.
Okay. Anyways, you're out at Independence Park.
I just don't like that name. Venhorst.
You're out at Venhorst Park.
Thank you. Sounds evil, and that course is evil.
It's the battle for Bedford. Okay.
I'm losing.
Yeah.
Bad.
You have a tough lie. All right. A very tough lie. And you finally figure out how you're going to throw it.
Yes.
You line up. You went through a few times. You're feeling good. And you finally are ready for the throw.
Okay.
You reach back. Then as you pull through, obviously you pull through more aggressive than you reach back.
My arm explodes.
As you pull through, you hit a branch that knocks the disc out of your hand. And then the disc proceeds to roll forward.
Hate to see it.
So.
It's like the tuck rule in football.
Does that throw count? Or are you able to pick that disc up, come back to your lie, and throw again with no penalty?
As you're pulling the disc through,
it hits a tree.
No. If I had to bet, the rule probably has something to do with like once you start the motion of pulling the disc through, then it's like considered a throw because that's a throw a million times over.
You are incorrect.
No,
I've stumped him.
Way.
This is actually this is word for word from a Q&A segment.
This is shocking.
And I had to look the rule up because I agree with you. Like, there's no way that's true.
How could you possibly?
It does not count. A throw. This is the definition of a throw in the PDGA's rulebook.
Does it have to be like in front of your body?
Nope. A throw is a propulsion and release of a disc in order to change its position. Each throw that is made as a competitive attempt to change the lie is counted. So basically, since it's the propulsion and release, an attempt to make
it was released
throw as a
via
you
a
didn't
branch.
release it.
You did.
No, because you weren't attempting to make a competitive attempt to change the lie when the branch.
You were
snapped
attempting. The branch just stopped you from.
All I'm saying is this is a Q&A section. You can look it up on the PDGA's website.
This was a question?
That was officially answered by the PDGA, and it said no.
Dumb.
It is not an attempted throw.
Super dumb. Can't wait to use that one on you.
I wish I would have. What do you mean? Oh, you're gonna hit a branch? I should have brought like confetti or something. I want like a popper and be like,
It's like the Penn and Teller Fool Us show.
Yeah,
where, like it comes down the trophy.
Yeah, that said this trophy says "F you." Fool us. Have you ever noticed that?
Yeah.
Oh, I love that show. Great show.
Great show.
All right, well, that is going to be it for this week, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hopefully you've enjoyed all the topics we talked about. Please comment down below your own opinion. Check out, the link will be in the description below to the article about my winners and losers for the offseason if you want to read a little bit more in-depth analysis on stuff like that. Let us know what you think of the fourth major. I think that is going to be a pretty hot topic across the board. I want to hear what you guys think. And also, if you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, please go ahead and leave us a review, whether it's 5-star, 1-star, doesn't matter. I love reading the reviews. We take the critique very seriously, and we are constantly trying to improve this show. But I don't think I missed anything. So that's going to be it. We will talk to you all next week.